Hi, I'm Professor Stephanie, and we're going to look at the color scheme activity, which is just going to get you set up for thinking about color schemes, thinking about value, contrast, all the good words that we're applying to our work here with our markers. I'm also hoping that you have your color wheel handy always when you're working with color. Remember, one color next to another affects it, whether it's close together. All of these, as we know, an analogous color scheme is a very soothing. The wavelengths are similar. So we're getting used to that. When we start going across the color wheel, yellow to purple, that's all very dramatic. The waves are very differently shaped. They're kind of knocking into each other, and they can create some fun ideas. Visuals for us. So just refer back to your color wheel as you're working with the assignments in this class, and I know that you'll continue to do that as you do your work in the design field. So to get yourself started here, we're going to get ourselves set up with the colors, markers you're going to use on the bottom. Those you're going to select from the name, from the type of color scheme you're going to use. I'm going to demonstrate a complementary color scheme. I don't know if you can notice or not, but I have guidelines here for my lettering. I always use guidelines for lettering, and I always use guidelines for my blocks of color. You want to be as neat and tidy as you can with everything you do from now on, okay? Good. So the goal is to use a color scheme, and as I said, I've got my colors ready, and I'm going to be working with complementary, which is red and green. I've got two markers each. One's a light, one's a dark. That's the dark and light value is very important to me. I have neutrals that I try to lean in, what I call leaning into red. We've got a brown that's close to a brown red, and then this is a tan, and again, this is considered a neutral. The two greens I have are a dark and a lighter one. It's more olivey, so it has a little yellow green in it. You can also see I've chosen a neutral that's yellow, and then a gray. So complementary is tricky because we've only got two main colors. When you start working with analogous, you've got a choice of 3, maybe 4, which works out really well. The triad, you've got 3 with a couple of neutrals. So I wanted to work with complementary because it was the hardest one. So I wanted to show you how I'm going to work that out. So part of when we're adding color to an image or to a interior space, we want to think about the lights and darks. Is this going to be a light ottoman against a dark cabinet, or a dark ottoman against a light cabinet? I like to have my, and it's something you can do in this class, continue to have the lighter neutral hues, colors on the floor and on the wall. They can also be very similar in their hue. So again, in certain settings you would have it be different, but this is we're going to be thinking very typically. So where I want to start is this ottoman, and it has the pattern. And patterns bring to us opportunities to bring all our colors together. And so I generally, when I'm selecting fabrics, and I start with my pattern. I find the style I want and the color combination I want. So we will start drawing that first, and then I'm going to think about the cabinet and then the things that are around it. So I'm going to choose, with complementary, we're going to choose between which of the hues is going to have most of the color on it. Remember, we've got football teams, which includes the orange and blue football team. We don't want to have 50-50 for sure, and it's best when you have 80% of one color, like red, and green is what I'm going to use, 80%, and then 20% of red. So I make that decision before I get started. So the ottoman is going to be mostly green with red and some of the other hues that I've picked to go in there to give it its flavor. So I have my 33 is the medium. I'm going to start with my medium red, and what's going to happen for me is the outline of what's already here. There's a little bit of a pattern already. I'm kind of dotting this along here. This, because my red is going to be the 20% or 30, it could be, I guess closer to 30, depends how we want to do the math, that we're going to use that just a little bit. I also want to add in some of these other markers, hues, that are going to be part of, it's going to be wood. So I'm just following along here with the pattern that already exists. That's, the line drawing. And I'm fitting in here's this yellow. As a matter of fact, the green is going to go right on top of this yellow, and that's going to add a little bit different value. So I'm going to actually get a third value. I'm going to have my two greens, and then I've got this yellow underneath here. Again, we're kind of stretching that color scheme. Here's my olive green. Let's see, actually I want to start with the 48. Okay, here we go. So then I'm going to continue the idea of the dots, or the kind of squiggly. I think that gives this a texture, like this is a heavy upholstery. There's one green, the medium green. Here comes the darker green. Kind of careful with the darker green, because it looks like to me, as I look at this, the ottoman's going to be the darker of the two, cabinet's going to be lighter. Okay, so that decision is being made as I work on this. I wasn't quite sure to begin with, and yet now that I look at this, this is part of where, when you're selecting fabrics and you put them on the table and the swatches, you can decide what areas need to be darker, and then what they're next to needs to be lighter. And if you have a question about this, if you have two really dark objects like this, if this cabinet was going to be the same value as the ottoman, then it would be a big black blob. I'm going to go ahead and just make this solid. You have an option to make it more colorful if you'd like to. These pleats would be darker. Here's my chance to add some value. Great. And I generally, which you've probably gotten some feedback, prefer not to leave the white. If you have a light marker or a gray marker, that's okay. So there's our ottoman, and I've got my two reds in there, two greens in there for sure. Now here comes the cabinet, and I'm actually going to start. I've got some grain in here already, and I'm going to go. My marker is going in the same line as the I'm going to have to be careful, because this next brown, this is some neutrals. Whoa, that's pretty dark. So my first layer is light. Just getting some wood grain flavor in here. I'm wondering too about that cream color that I had before, the 70. Let's see if I can. 70? I'm going to pop a little of this in there too. Also, I want to make that brass. It could be silver, but I have added the yellow tones. Oh boy, running out of this marker. So there's another layer of flavor, color, and I'm going to come back with what I started with. And just push this back a little bit. And this is a blending story right now. Now things are blending together. And again, I'm trying real hard not to get too dark. It's kind of like on the medium side, but we can still see the ottoman, which is great. If I needed to, I could come back and darken the ottoman, so so we get a little bit of that push-pull. Great. Now I want to add quite a bit of the red. This is gonna be red. This is actually it actually is like a little box. It was leather. It was red leather, as a matter of fact. The lines back here were for darkness, but I'm going to use just make this solid. I don't always do things solid, but this seems to be, this was the lighter of the two reds. Here comes the darker. Notice my strokes are staying with the strokes that are already there. This is a great opportunity. The activities in this, first activities you do, I really am interested in you thinking of this as practice. And then as you work on the different assignments, some of them get to be a little bit more finished. I want this to be neat and tidy, but I understand that it's an activity. Great. Now I'm going to take this golden color, this right here, and it's going to be the wall, and I'm going to try to do again, I'm a big fan with these assignments you're doing in this class to have your walls be very neutral. Walls take up a lot of room in a space. Okay, if you think about them, you have 8-foot, 10-foot ceilings, and you have a color on it going from the top to, there's a lot of color. So generally being neutral with walls is a good idea. The other thing I wanted to try was to add this, oops, I'm sorry, wrong one, oops, it's a little bit of gray here. And what's going to happen with the gray is I am going to be thinking about value, because that would be darker back in the corner here. It's going to be my darker. Got a little bit of theme in there. This gets lighter, and this gets really light, okay? And you do want to touch everything. You don't want to have any white showing, but it would be lighter to darker in here. Using a swirly, great, light, super light here. Okay, great, good. All right, so whoa, we got a little spot right here. I want to put a little brown in there. I can see the corner. Yep, good, great. So the goal was to use the pattern, have multicolors in there, have it dark against the lighter cabinet. This stands alone. It can be dark or light, really. It might be interesting to trade off for the other one. Think about a little shade and shadow there, and then keep that wall neutral if you can. Great. Thank you very much.